Welcome to Conversations with Laurel, everyone. I'm your host, Laurel McHargue. This is a podcast about people with stories to share with the world. And today we have Robert Isenberg, also known as Robert. And we're going to call him Robert. And he's returned to us today to discuss his remarkable book, Wham Bam, NYC and the Roaring Sixties. Robert, welcome back to Conversations
Thank
with
you.
Laurel.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, and you know, when you put the book up there like that, it still touches me because I wrote it a couple of years ago,
Yeah?
and I really haven't read it that much, a little bit, um, but the book is one of my great accomplishments in that I was able to put down what happened to me, oh, and what I did to happen to the rest of the people that I knew um, in 1964 when I moved from really Dorchester, Mass, which is a very small suburb was then, um, to Manhattan. And boy, was I scared. Um, in the first sections of the book, you see me questioning myself and the, the confidence, such an important word, wasn't there.
Right.
And I'm thinking, that I didn't get the grades I wanted in various schools. And, I just did not have good feelings about Robert. I was not Robert at that time. I
That
was a
comes through. It definitely comes through your naivete in a way. I mean, because you are a young man, right? And you talk about Dorchester, which is where my grandparents lived and where my dentist was. We're not going to talk about my dentist, but this book. Well, first of all, you talk about not being confident, right? But what one thing I would like to know is who took this photo of you on the back cover. We're talking, this is a Burt Reynolds hubba hubba wow photo of you. Who took that photo? Do you even
I'd
remember?
say that was a fake. No,
That's you.
that's me in 1968. And I'm on my honeymoon, and my
Ah,
beautiful, wonderful, incredible wife took that picture of me. And
well, good job, Esther.
yeah, and we were in Jamaica, which was in Astoria in South Jamaica. When I think about Jamaica and the craziness, that we first landed in Jamaica and we said who we were. And, we said, where's our room? Oh, they said, we don't have a room for you. We're on our honeymoon.
No,
Yes, we will have to put you up at a little house.
a
It's a bit of a
house.
walk from the beach.
Oh my. So who messed up that one?
So we went up to this little house, and in order to patch up what they had done to us, they gave us a large bottle of wine.
Okay.
Esther never saw me again.
Oh my
This was on
gosh.
our honeymoon.
Oh wow. That's amazing. And
Yeah,
you're still married all these years later. That's good. Um, Ro-
yeah. A lot of
Robert.
things happened there that were really unusual in Jamaica. But the weather was, of course, incredible, and the
Yeah.
scenery the same. And it was another learning experience. Which Wham Bam is about a young man moving to New York City, scared out of his mind, and learning. Asking questions, um, trying to find out who he is, what the world's about, how he can fit in best. Um, and get over, being shy, which I was shy and nervous. They go together,
Yeah.
and slowly but surely, as Wham Bam progresses, a little bit of that shyness and lack of confidence begins to delete and drip away. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
when I go back to the book, it's 98%, even though it happened so many years ago. It's 98, 99% of everything that happened to me, and again, what I did to make other things happen.
It's
Um,
it's remarkable in many ways. I mean, it's I'd call it an expose in a way. You expose a lot about yourself. You're very honest in it. Sometimes a little bit shockingly so. And I definitely get that feeling that it's kind of a memory lane, trip down memory lane kind of thing. You know, just there are scenes where you talk about, you know, a song on the jukebox that plays, and I'm thinking, oh, I remember that. Jukeboxes. Do people even know what those are anymore?
and it was constant at the bar. The jukebox never stopped, even though it was 25 cents, which was money then.
Yes.
Um, it was. And, it just would go on and on. And, here I am in the bar every single night listening to it, drinking along with it. And, it was one hell of an experience. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. Uh, didn't make much money, but I I learned a lot and had some fun and, gave some fun to other people. And created Robert's fairly famous roast beef sandwiches.
Robert's fairly famous roast beef sandwiches. We have to talk about that because you talk about your fairly famous roast beef sandwiches throughout the book, and I found myself salivating. I'm like, I am so hungry right now. What I would give for a roast beef sandwich, and just the way you described it, and yeah, you made me hungry. So, what was it? What do you think it was about your roast beef sandwiches that uh, made them
Well,
so good?
first of all, let me give you the price.
Oh, yeah, yes, which is in here, which is amazing.
You're going to be sitting down.
I am. I'm on my balance ball.
85 cents.
5 cents.
Yeah. And that was with, if you wanted, a Bermuda onion and Russian dressing. Yeah. And I think I charged for the coleslaw and potato salad 25 cents each, I think. Yeah. And they were good. I mean, it was probably the best coleslaw and potato salad I ever had. I got it from the Bronx. That was a story in itself, and that's in the book too. You
It
know,
is.
when
Your
I go,
dealer. You had a dealer.
yeah, and when I go and I ask the deli guy, where do you get this corned beef? Where do you get this potato salad? And he says, schmuck, as he insulted me in Yiddish or something. He said, you don't know anything. It's because I said to him, do you make this back in the kitchen? Well, yeah, where do you think we are? We buy it. And he tells me where. And I go in to where he tells me. And there's a plank that's the size of a football field with people chopping up coleslaw and potatoes. And so I told them that I was starting this business and, would they be able to help me get product because I didn't have much money and they would deliver it and they did. And I proceeded to sell that along with the roast beef sandwiches. And yeah, people did say and go into gushing about the sandwich. This is tapping my memory because I remember conversations. I remember where people stood when they said different things. But to remember exactly how I made that sandwich, I'm going to have to do a little testing. I think I used I round roast beef,
Okay.
and I had a real slicing machine, and so we cut it real thin. And people just said I cooked it medium rare. People just said this is the best sandwich I ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes into the story where the guy wants to franchise it. He comes in.
Yes. So talk about that because again, here I am thinking, wow, what an opportunity for a young man who has kind of stumbled into this fun idea where you're obviously helping the bars big time with their sales because
Yeah.
now people aren't just going to get drunk, they're going to have a meal, right? I mean, you did so much. And so talk about the guy coming in and talking to you about franchising.
Well, he came in once. Um, it's interesting too because of the age. I'm 23, but 23 in 1964 is a lot younger than 23 now. Kids who are 23 and 24 now are much more sophisticated, much more knowledgeable than we were. They're better educated. They have a more sense of the world because of, television and because of what we're doing right now. And
Mhm.
none of these things existed to that extent. Sure, we had television, but not like today. We didn't get to see the world, and we didn't know about computers and online. It didn't exist. I mean, people were working on them. As if you get into the book further, two guys have a discussion about what the future is going to bring. Um, One of them is a professor at the New School for Social Research, which I actually ended up going to. Um, but it was a totally different world um, in every way. And at that time, 23 was really young.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas you see 23 and 24 now, people, on TV selling product,
Yeah.
that they may have invented because of their background it's given to them today as opposed to then.
Hmm.
Um, there are so many things that are so different and started to happen in New York City in the 60s, and I talk about some of them. I can't talk about every one of them because there's
Right.
only so many pages in a book.
Right. Right. But
Yeah.
back to this franchise guy. He came in one day. Do you know how he found out about you? It was probably word of mouth, right?
I have no idea. Just somebody said to me, there's a guy back there who wants to talk to you. So I went back and he had the sandwich and he said, this is the best sandwich I've ever had. He said, and I am a person who sets up franchises. To me, this is again 1964 franchise.
Yeah.
There's no place to look it up. There's no such thing as Google to Google
Right.
what a franchise is. And I'm saying, what do you mean by that? He says, well, that means a whole flock of stores throughout not only the country, but the world. I said, and you're going to take my sandwiches there? He said, yep. And he said, you're going to be a very, very rich man. And, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking how poor I am. It all sounds good. I said, well, let me think about it. Give me 2 days. And I thought about it, and I knew the following things. I knew I did not have a lawyer. I knew I couldn't afford a lawyer. Um, I figured that he was very savvy about everything, and I was not. And I figured to myself, I'll make the sandwiches there. He'll see them, or his people will see them, and I'll be gone in about 3 months. And I'll leave everything that I'm doing here, which is giving me a lot of fun that I've never experienced before, and meeting people, girls, and I met with him 2 days later, and I said no. How would my life have changed if I had done it? I really think I would have lasted maybe 6 months, and they would have thrown me out, because they would have had everything I'd done and whatever. I didn't consider it a secret. But don't forget the thing about a person who's not confident, and I was not. You don't think when you do something that it's that great, and you're surprised when people go on about it, which I was, because I thought, this is just a sandwich, and it looks good. I more than had my share of it, and it tasted very good, but I didn't think I was alone. And again, in that time frame, I probably was. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So you think Arby's was based on your sandwich?
I think say that again.
Do you think Arby's was based on your sandwich? You think
Well, they
somebody
did start. They did
think
start.
that guy took it and
They did
ripped?
start in '64, and I have gone to Arby's a few times, um, and I never thought it was that good. But the roast fish sandwich, I didn't think was that good. But they had something that I did like. I had a brisket sandwich there, and I thought that was extraordinary. And I forget. I looked up Arby's recently and how much they're worth. Uh, it was huge. It was in the billions. Yeah. Um, and they don't have one in Lexington or nearby. Yeah,
So
I tried. Well,
it's not too late. How about another Robert's almost famous roast beef
Well,
sandwiches. You could do that in Lexington.
yeah, my idea is that hopefully if it turns into a movie, and I think there's enough in there that it could, um, that would be my ability to go to somebody, not me, a company, say like uh, I don't know, that doesn't have that sandwich or a roast beef sandwich, and work out some sort of situation that they could have Robert's fairly famous.
Who would play Robert in the film?
The movie, that's another interesting question. There was a time when I knew young actors.
Yeah,
I don't know one.
yeah.
Yeah, if they come on The View, I have no idea who they are. Um, yeah, again, everything changes, and certainly the world of acting. When I was young, I would have been able to, give you 25 who I would have liked to have played me, or even 20 years later. But now, after 60 years, I have no idea. Yeah,
Ah, yeah, I was gonna say a young Robert Redford, Robert Redford, no, Burt Reynolds.
and let
So
alone
you,
to tell a book.
yeah, I know. So you had some really good friends who helped you, because again, you went from one or two people saying, you know, can you deliver me a sandwich? Or the time you delivered it to those two women, which was kind of a steamy scene there.
That's a
And
true story too about going over to the east side, just on the borderline of the east and west side, um, and they were rich girls. Yeah, and I think that was one of the first sandwiches I ever delivered. Maybe one of the last. Yeah, it was quite. Yeah,
so
yeah.
so you went from like delivering two sandwiches, as you said, to needing help, needing a lot of help because all of a sudden it's not just two that you're producing. I mean, so how
No,
did you get your friends to help you
no,
with this?
I did not. I did not have. In the beginning, there were girls who put out the the posters about Robert's Fairly Famous, and they helped a lot. And and in the beginning, I made all the sandwiches in the beginning and
Hmm.
delivered a good portion of them,
Hmm.
and so did Jake, my friend Jake, and we started off, and then it wasn't probably 2 weeks after starting that I got the call for 60 sandwiches or 70. I don't know. And I'm saying, are they kidding? All I could produce with what I had was about 19 and
Yeah.
delivered them to the bar. And I explained to the person that was pointed to, who was the manager of the bar. I said, this is all the sandwiches I could make tonight. You have to give me notice.
Hmm.
And he said, well, that's not easy, but I will try to. And I said, I'm looking in your kitchen and I don't see anybody there. And he said, I can't keep a cook. And that's when I said, you're looking at one. And so that's when Robert's Fairly Famous moved out of his apartment into Lloyd's at the bar
Yeah.
and started making my sandwiches there. And the delivery basically stopped because people came into the bar. And, we were selling 40, 50 sandwiches a night. In those days, that was a lot of sandwiches. I have no idea what that would translate to today, but it was a lot for us. And I didn't need any help except the waitresses, of course, were a huge help.
Yeah.
Um, because I didn't bring them to the table. I just sliced it up, put it on a platter, and the girls would take it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get paid? Was it weekly? Was it nightly? How did you work that out?
Well, I got paid immediately. The person would give the waitress the money, and they'd give it to me, and yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
And I
And
would imagine.
the bar did not ask for a penny of it. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. They were just happy to have a cook that was going to stay there, and not only that, unfortunately, they provided me with free drink, which was very bad.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. That's well, so again, what amazes me is your memory, because again, this was published a few years ago, but you have, I mean, all your chapters, the real business in the making, the delivery boy, Lloyd's, the Simon and Garfunkel concert. Talk about the Simon and Garfunkel concert. But again, you've got so many specific things the bottle of vodka, that whole mystery. You have a little mystery in there. Um, it's amazing how much you remembered. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Well, a couple of years ago, my memory was a lot sharper than it is for today. But yeah, I remembered just about all of it. It was such a big event in my life. Coming from Dorchester, which was basically hit the ball, tag football, once in a while tackle football at Franklin Park. Um, they really, very little. We had two movie theaters, which I guess we attended once in a while. Um, very, very few restaurants, if any, that I remember. And suddenly I landed in another planet, New York City. And bam, wham, wham, bam. I mean, that's
hmm
what it was. I mean, I could not believe my eyes or my ears. I had had very little success with the female sex at that point. I had two experiences that I note in the book. One is the one when I went to an all boys camp and I met a girl who went to an all girls camp. And we decided, to meet on the lake because there was an island in between the two camps. And we both had the same nights off and we met at the camp. And then, I told you the rest of the story about how she avoided me in the fall and why. And,
hmm
um, I was not so hurt about her. I was hurt about how people think, because of why she wasn't allowed to speak to me again.
Yeah.
Um,
You
and
want to talk about that? You want to tell our listeners
no,
about
just
that?
put that as a mystery why she wouldn't speak to me again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in the
And
book. It's in the book. Got to read the book.
it's in the book. That's right. And the next year, I went to a co-ed camp, and I took up with the owner's niece, and we were, I guess, more than buddy buddy for the summer. And that ended because she came from a much richer section that I lived in, and she basically had little to do with me in the fall. So I started thinking to myself, maybe I'm only attractive in the summer. There's something about me in the summer that girls like, but they sure don't like it in the winter. And here I went to an all boys school, and so I had very little contact with women except basically those two girls. And then I went off to college with this very, very shy Robert, which is who I was. And, I felt very bad about both things that had happened in the summer, thinking that I'm just a loser in the winter, so I even bothered to try. And I didn't. And whatever dates I had were probably miserable. Um, if I held a girl's hand, I thought I'd done it was a big evening. So that was my background coming into New York City.
Wow.
And and then about 2 weeks into New York City, uh, somebody in my apartment that I was living in said, "Would you like to go to a party tonight?" I said, "Would I like to go? Are you kidding? I'm there already." And so I met this girl, and we talked for about 3 to 4 minutes. I think there was a rule in New York that you could only talk to somebody for a limited amount of time, and then you had to move on to the next person.
Huh.
And so I talked to this girl named Pat, and she'd come in from Michigan. Um, her dad had given her a black, she told me, a black Chrysler convertible for the
Ooh.
fact that she got all A's. Her dad was very successful. And she had the car and she was very proud of it. And she said she came in just for a few weeks to check out New York and see some of her friends in New York. And as I went to leave, I, only talked to her a couple of minutes. I went to leave. She came up back over to me and she said, "Where you living?" Well, I said, "Well, I just moved here, and I just took an apartment on East 85th." I said, "Would you like to see it?" She said, "I'd love to." I said, "Well, when would you be available?" She said, "Right now." So,
And now you're really scared, right?
well, I didn't know enough to be scared at that point. I really didn't. I really had no idea what was going to happen. So we piled into her car and we went to my apartment. and she didn't leave for about 4 months.
She was not just a summer fling.
Well, yes, she was.
Well,
It happened again.
yeah, yeah,
It did. And what happened is she was there, I think that was probably April, mid-April, and she stayed until probably mid-September. And as we parted, she said, "Now I want you to make me some promises." She said, "I don't want you to ever go out with anybody else." She did. She said, "Because we have a future." And she said,
yeah.
"I also don't want you to wear short sleeve shirts." And the reason, well, at the time I was very muscular. She said, "I don't want you to show off those arms. Will you make those
Oh.
promises?" I said, "Oh." I didn't know any other girls, so that was easy. And I didn't have that many short sleeve shirts. So, yeah, I said, "Yeah, okay." And she goes back, and for about 2 weeks, the conversations were full of love you, and you're the best thing that happened to me. And then it wasn't. And I mean, the wasn't was a big wasn't.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I became the worst person that God ever created.
Oh.
And she could not have a kind word for me. And so I figured it happened again. There must be something about me in the summer that they hate me in the winter.
Makes no
But
sense. You didn't stay
but
single long though.
so anyhow, goodbye, Pat. And then I am fortunate enough to one day be in my lobby of the apartment I was living in, and along comes this very, very attractive woman, and we start talking, and she says, "What do you love? What's your apartment number?" And I tell her, and she says, "I live right over you." So I said, "We should get together." And she said, "Yeah." She said, "Hey, how about tonight?" She said, "I don't have anybody coming over, and I'm gonna cook up some pasta. Would you like to come?" I said, "Well, what do you mean? You're not having anybody coming over? So that's, now you have me?" She said, "Well, I'll phrase it differently." She said, "I'd love to have you for dinner." And I said, "Well, I'd love to come." And Sue was just something really, really so ahead of her time. She was a flight attendant, incredibly beautiful, from the Midwest, um, somewhat shy like I was. She did not think of herself as being even pretty, although she was drop dead gorgeous. And she was drop dead nice
Hmm.
and smart. And, she had seen Pat a few times um, in the lobby, and she said, "I hate her." And I said, she said, "Because she's such a snob, and she's so great because she goes to college." She said, "Those college kids, they don't have to know half of what I know, and they make fun of me for being a flight attendant, but I know 10 times more. They don't have to worry about people and saving people's lives." He said, "They read books, big deal." And she went on and on. And we fell, I wouldn't say in love, but in very much like. And
Yeah, with
uh,
benefits. Yeah.
yeah. And then the most amazing thing happened in my life. No, Sue's not there. Yeah, but Sue was at least as pretty as either one of those girls. She was a redhead,
Yeah.
a real redhead.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think people bleach their hair as much as they do now. I mean, now everybody puts tints in it and stuff. They didn't then. They were blondes, weren't blondes, but she was a real redhead and blue eyes, um, slim. And in those days, to work for TWA, which he did, unfortunately, they picked by beauty.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that changed obviously, but they
Right.
did. The prettier the girl was, the better chance they had to be a flight attendant.
Right.
Um, and, Sue was a very person to person that she wanted to help people, and she felt she could as a flight attendant.
Hmm.
Uh, and
What I
so,
what I was gonna say what I enjoyed about this. You remember the song "Knock Three Times on the Ceiling If You Want Me"? You remember that song? That
yes,
reminded me
I
of
do,
the
I
the
do.
way you
But
guys communicated, right? Talk
that's
about
funny. I
that.
did not identify that song
Knock
with what
three
happened.
times on the ceiling if you want me. So what did you guys do? talk about how
Well,
you guys communicated.
well, Sue came up with this brilliant idea after our first night together. What happened first is, it was just innocent. I loved her cooking. I loved the pasta. I asked for more, and we had a wonderful time talking. And then I went back to my apartment. I don't even think I kissed her goodnight. And I then invited her to exchange what she had done, that I would cook a roast beef sandwich, a roast beef dinner for her. I had not started Robert's Fairly Famous yet. I
Oh,
wanted
okay. All
to,
right.
yeah. And so I cooked up a dinner and she said, "Where the hell did you learn how to cook like this?" And I said, "Self-taught." I said, nobody really ever instructed me. I just learned how to cook all different things. And I said I was pretty helpful to my mom, who wasn't particularly healthy. And so I did a lot of cooking then. And she was very impressed, and I was very happy. And she said, "Would you like to come up to my apartment?" And I said, "Would I like to?" I couldn't say like enough. And so, yeah, we made love. And afterwards, she said, "I have an idea." She said, "When I come home from a flight and I'm not too tired, I will stomp on the floor, and that means you should come up." And I said, "Geez, that sounds like a best plan I ever heard of."
Wow. Wow.
That is
So,
true.
yeah, yeah. Everything in here is true. And again, it's just it
Well, there's a couple of things that aren't. Um, First of all, I had to create a waitress, which Esther helped me with,
yeah,
her
right.
name and so forth. Because in the bar, we had many cooks.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, many waitresses, and I was the one cook, and
Yeah.
they couldn't keep a waiter, and most of them were male, and most of them got unhappy. This wasn't good, that wasn't good, and so I created a woman to be the waitress,
Yeah,
and
it made sense. I mean, it felt real. You got to,
she's quite a character in the
yeah,
book.
yeah, yeah.
And
Oh, she's great.
the other thing is that we don't know is true. It may have been is Esther. I put Esther in the book because I wanted her to be there. But what happened is she was going to Vassar, and she did have a boyfriend, an actor in the city, and she came in most every weekend. Uh, and the actor's roommate was a regular at Lloyd's. He was there almost every night. And so we don't really know because we didn't know each other.
Mhm.
And she doesn't remember if she came into Lloyd's and if her boyfriend went to see his roommate there. So I put her in the bar, not knowing whether she was there or not, because if she were there, I wouldn't have known it because I didn't know her.
Right,
I
right.
only met her after many years, I think 3 years later. Yeah.
Yeah. So she went to Vassar. I
Yeah.
actually, I actually interviewed at Vassar. I ended up going to Smith.
You were
Um,
interviewed at Vassar?
huh?
I
I
said,
yes, I
oh,
interviewed there, and then I decided to go to Smith College. So
you went
I
to
went
Smith?
I went to Smith College for a year and a half, and then I left and went to West Point. Yeah.
Yeah. What was Smith like?
Smith, I loved it. Oh my gosh, it was great. All women's college in Northampton. You're probably familiar with it. Um, it was great. It was wonderful for me, after leaving high school to go to a place where I was surrounded by women who really wanted to learn and kind of found myself there. But then after a year and a half, I decided I needed a bigger challenge, and so that's when I decided to go to West Point.
And then
Anyway,
when you
that's
then when you came in the army, what was your rank?
well, you graduate from West Point as a second lieutenant, and when I left the army, I was a major. So, and I left the army because I wanted to spend more time being a mother than being a soldier. So that was, we have two sons, and I don't regret at all leaving the army to spend more time with them. But yeah, no, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, Vassar, you married a Vassar girl. That was a little
I also talk about the army in the book.
yeah.
And the reason I speak about it is the youngest is 7. And when I was born, my oldest sister was a sophomore in University of New Hampshire. That's how broad the family was
Mm.
and parted as far as age, distant. And during the Second World War, I had three brothers in the Air Force, and one of them was a lieutenant. He had wanted to be a pilot. He ended up being a navigator, and he did 50 missions. And he won the Distinguished Flying Cross for saving his crew in one night.
Mm.
Another brother was a mechanic, and he made sure the planes were as safe as they could before they took off. And the third brother flew a B-26, and in the last or second to last mission, they were shot down.
Mm.
We never saw them again.
Yeah.
That's in the other book. It's called The Car Ride,
Yeah.
um, and it's about us going to see him before he takes off.
Mhm. Yeah, you've got a lot of stories, Robert.
Yeah, well, it's because I was born so long ago and I'm so old.
You're you're 87? How old are
Yeah,
you? 87?
and
Gosh.
my doctor reminded me of that yesterday. She said, "You know," I said, "Yeah, I know."
And you're still doing Toastmaster presentations.
Well, yeah, I don't know about storytelling on it. It's coming to a head at this moment. I just got an email from somebody friendly with who's in the Brotherhood with me from my temple, and I've been in that for years too. And I've performed there, as you may know. I've done a thing called Still Standing, and I brought a group of
Mhm.
people together, and I told at least three stories, some of which are on YouTube. And I'm now wondering, if I can have the same recall to do the stories. I just got an email from today that the in Bedford they have the veterans um, who are hospitalized, and we had performed there. And of course, we don't ask for any money.
Mhm.
Um, and we had performed there about 9 months ago, and they really liked us, so they're asking us back in June. And so I'm contemplating it, and we'll see.
I
And
think you
one
should.
hand, it could be a good test, and it
Yeah.
could be something I could share with them.
Yeah,
But
I think so.
yeah, but let's get back to Wham Bam.
So back to Wham Bam. Who should read this and what do you want readers to take from this book?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm so happy you asked it because I go back to what we talked about in the beginning, confidence. And there are few things more important in life than having confidence. With it, you can do so many things, and without it, you can do so few. And confidence is not easily acquired, and it's a subtle thing. You don't know when you have it, and you don't know when you don't. And suddenly, when you're able to do things that you weren't able to do before, you realize that the confidence is coming. And the more you do, the stronger it gets because you see that you're being accepted, and most of all, you're accepting yourself, and that is so important to have. And that's what I would like people to see, that this young man who really started off. I I have had people say to me, in various groups. I was taking some writing courses over at Tufts, and you read excerpts, and so I said, in the beginning of the book, it says, something about me being shy, and I said, somebody stood up and said, "You're not shy." I was so taken aback. I didn't say this was 60 effing years ago.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
How do you know what I was like when I was 23 or 24 or 25, or even 30,
Yeah.
But people are so ignorant, you're not shy, he said.
Not
As a matter of
anymore.
fact, he said,
Not anymore.
as a matter of fact, he says, you're brash. Now, this is coming from reading the first page of the book. So you have to laugh about it.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that you laugh. I love that you laugh at yourself. I think we all need to do that more, right?
Well, you have to realize that, a lot of the things that happen and don't happen are very funny.
Yeah,
And you have to look at it as best you can that way.
yeah.
Um, and, there were a lot of funny things that happened. You asked about the Simon and Garfunkel concert.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was quite an experience because Ira, who I mentioned early on in the book, incredible character. Ira was always had been a teacher, and he only wanted to work in the most deprived areas in the city, and he did that for years. And then finally, he became a therapist, and didn't have much success with his first marriage. Married again, and they had a house up in the upper part of New York, and they took their dog up there, and they let the dog out. Unfortunately, the dog fell into a well,
Oh,
and the wife went after the dog, and then Ira went after them both, and I never saw Ira again. Yeah, they
whoa.
never. But Ira was an incredible person, and a very prominent in the book. And Ira had grown up with Simon and Garfunkel in the Queens on the same street. And so Ira said to us, Jake and myself, when we're having dinner with them one time, I have tickets for the Simon and Garfunkel concert that'll take place in Forest Hills. They were just starting to emerge.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Early 60s, Sounds of Silence.
Oh,
Yeah. They weren't the Simon and Garfunkel that they became mid and later 60s. And they were new, but Ira had grown up with them. And Ira said, I have tickets. Would you guys like them? And they're on the house. Would we like them? So we went to the concert, and the Mamas Papas actually performed. They were the lead group. They were
wow.
there too. Simon and
Yeah.
Garfunkel
Hmm.
were the lead in front of. They were going to introduce the Mamas and Papas.
Hmm.
Well, Paul Simon came out, and there was no Art Garfunkel, and the audience, you know, oh, this is Simon. It's not Simon and Garfunkel. Finally, Garfunkel came out. We could only surmise what happened later. Ira seemed to know that there was problems between the two of them, and maybe Art Garfunkel said, "I'm not coming out," and then he did, and they proceeded to, give us an incredible concert.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they sang "Sounds of Silence," but they had enough for repertoire uh, to please everybody in the audience, and it was a wonderful moment. Um, and in the book, I have people coming to it with us that I don't think they really came, but I wanted that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the few things that aren't true, but the
Right.
concert's very true, and the excitement in the concert, and the fact that they were just beginning, and we were sitting with somebody who grew up with him, and Ira was such a special guy, anyhow. So the whole evening was just a wonderful treat, and we were all thrilled by it.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, we couldn't afford most concerts. This one
Yeah.
we could afford. Yeah.
They cost more than a roast beef sandwich, right?
Well, they were getting to be,
Yeah.
there was no question, an incredible talent.
Yeah.
How many people can sing as beautifully as Art Garfunkel? And
Right.
Paul Simon was, in of himself, not only a good singer, but an incredible writer. I don't think Art Garfunkel wrote many songs, but, they were both very, very smart kids. I think kids, they were getting to be men.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think Garfunkel was going to Columbia. Um, I mean, they were really bright, both of them. Simon, obviously, yeah.
Well, Robert Isenberg, author of Wham Bam, NYC in the Roaring Sixties, and other works. Thank you for sharing this book with us. You can find this on Amazon. Yes, listeners and viewers out there, you can get this on Amazon. Get it today. It's fun. It's an easy read. It takes you into the New York City vibe back then. Again, lots of different things happening in here that you capture so in such a real way. It's amazing. And so I'm going to have you back, Robert, because I would like for you to continue sharing the stories that you have in your book, Why Men are suspicious of yoga. You've got a bunch of short stories in that, which are really fun. And I would like you to come back if you would. If you would you share some of those stories? Continue to share those with me?
Oh, I would love to, almost as much as I loved going up to Sue's apartment. And those two books sold 9,000 books down in South Carolina, uh,
Awesome.
at the end of March and beginning of April.
All
So,
righty. Any last words to say about this to our listeners out there?
well, I would love everybody that has heard what I had to say and those that haven't to pick it up and give it a read, give it a chance.
Hmm.
You'll find out a story um, very much like most of us growing up, um, trying to find yourself, trying to find out how you're going to fit in, what you can do, to make a living, to provide for yourself and the family that you hopefully will have. And that's what the book's about. How do you find that word, that confidence to be able to do the things that you really want to do and to make yourself happy and the people around you happy and to find, uh, through yourself and confidence, love and appreciation of what the world can give you and what you can give to the world.
That's a beautiful message. And on that note, thank you. And we'll see you again. And if any of you listeners out there have something that you'd like to share with me, a conversation you'd like to have with me, let me know. Email me. I'll have the link below, and I'll have a link below also of both of Robert's books and the previous episodes that I've had with him. And I hope you come back and listen to more of our podcast. Robert, have a great, wonderful day, and we'll see you probably next week.
Great fun.
All
Thank you.
right. Bye bye.